Hey everybody, so for today's Future Friday, last week I did a blog post, today I want to do a video. There's something I really just want to talk about, and that's the fact that last night SpaceX did something fantastic. They reused a rocket for the first time, and if you've been paying attention to the news, it's being reported as this really big event, and it is, and I just want to talk about it for a few minutes because it's something that I've been waiting for years. I have a background in aerospace engineering. I went to school for aerospace engineering with a focus on astronautics in particular. So I studied launch vehicles and satellites in particular when I was in school. And this is something that the concept of this didn't exist when I was in school about 6 or 7 years ago. The idea of reusing rockets was ridiculous. It wasn't in the mindset. So the fact that we've gone from, I graduated and I remember when SpaceX had their first sort of video showcasing how they plan to land rockets, let alone reuse, was mind-boggling. And the fact that they succeeded in that, last year, a few years ago, and then now that they're on to actually refurbishing and reusing them is really awesome. So the main thing with that is that it can bring down the cost. Elon Musk compared it to, imagine if you flew an aircraft and your airplanes had to be used once, torn down, ripped apart, and then rebuilt again. It doesn't make sense because the cost of it is so insane. And that's been the problem with space travel for the longest time, is that you've had one-used rockets where you would send them up, and then when they would come back down, they would either fall through the atmosphere and burn up, or they would fall in such terrible shape that you couldn't really, you could refurbish them, but you'd be refurbishing 90 to 95% of the parts, in which point it's just as expensive as basically buying a new one. So they claim that the cost on this is going to bring it down roughly 40%. I think it said 30%, and then maybe another 10% later on, depending on use case. So that's pretty good. That'll bring down the cost a lot on this sort of thing if you're willing to reuse or use a reused rocket. The rocket's already gone in space. And the future of this is that this is just kind of the birthplace of this technology, right? We can prove it here that it can be done. You can replace the worn out parts if you need to, and send a rocket up again without sort of structural damage that could be a risk to another flight. So that's fantastic. And I think really going forward though is what's going to be interesting, because right now the cost savings is about 40%. I think as time goes on, we build more rockets, and you have more reusable situations, the cost will continue to drop, because as you reuse over and over again, it's going to be able to, you're going to be able to drop the price on that because you're kind of spreading that cost out over more and more flights. So we'll see what happens in the long term. But then also applying that technology into new rockets that are coming out. The biggest one I really want to talk about today, because this is Future Fridays, is in the future, SpaceX has already said that they're working on something called the interplanetary transport system, which is a huge rocket that is probably about 8 to 9 times the size of any other rocket that's like planned, much less built. I think it can lift about 1 million tons into space, which is roughly the same mass as the International Space Station. So the cargo compartment's not that big, but the actual mass itself it can put up is that much, which is huge. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. The future, if you have a large rocket, extremely large rocket, that is reusable, you can drive the cost down on that huge rocket. And I don't even know, we don't know the numbers, we don't know the exact cost because it's so early in development. We don't know how that capacity, if we'll be able to achieve that capacity, or if there'll be other issues along the way. But let's say that we do. Let's say we can get 1 million tons into space, and then we have maybe send up another rocket with fuel on board and a motor to help push it. I don't know how that's all going to work out yet, but just getting that amount of stuff into space at once allows for travel and sending probes to places that just has never been done. And it's one of those turning points. We talk about exponential technology, we talk about big changes to the future. That's something that can do it. When you can send, dozens or hundreds of probes, of good-sized rovers to another planet at once, and not have to pay the cost of sending a very small rover around Jupiter for gravity assist, and then out to the outer planets, however you want to do it. But you can plan to do it with hundreds of them, and you could split that cost between many, many probes and many, many rovers. It's going to drive down the cost of deep space exploration a lot. And so that's still many years away. That rocket, again, is in development now. But SpaceX has shown that they can move quick, and they've moved very quick so far to get to where they are. But I have faith that they will build that rocket, and when it happens, it's going to be really awesome. So again, probably still 10, 15 years away for that one. But as most of the things I talk about, that's probably about the time frame we're looking. So when you figure we're going to have that meeting up with AI and robotics and all sorts of other things that can really all kind of converge at that point to make a really cool future, really cool system. So kind of a bit of a rant, but I really love what they did. I love the fact that we've got a reusable rocket now. It's going to drive that cost down, and I'm interested to see what startups or other small businesses, compared to the multi-billion dollars it cost to put things on other planets before. If we can drive that cost down to hundreds of millions, and maybe even in the future tens of millions, to go to other planets and explore, the amount of science that you can do, the amount of exploration you can do, and eventually the colonization of other planets, or sending people just on exploration missions to asteroids, it's going to drive down all of those costs so much. And that's where it gets really exciting. So that's what I want to talk about today. If you have any thoughts about this, or if you're in the space industry and you're working on these projects, or you've thought about it, or you've had discussions about it, post in the comments below. I'm super curious to hear about this. This is just, again, Future Fridays. Kind of let your mind go wild with what the future can hold. And so that's kind of what I'm excited to see. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But whatever you think is going to happen in the future, go ahead, drop it down below, and let's have a discussion about it. So, all right, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next week.